Hey everyone, welcome to day 29 of 30 tips to help improve your musicianship. Today I'm going to talk about some left hand things. You know, I see so much stuff in and have seen so much stuff in books about what your technique should look like, what your left hand should look like, what your right hand should look like. Today we're just going to discuss the left hand, but I want to point a few things out. No one, no book, no author, no one can tell you the thing that's going to keep your hand relaxed. Everybody's physicality, a little bit different. Uh, the best thing that you can do is play with a relaxed hand. So I know that a lot of books, when I started playing, keep your thumb behind the neck. It's, at 12 o'clock, this, that, the other thing. And I remember going through a point in time, I was using 11 through 49 strings on an ES335 and, doing bends. And if you watch that, you can see my thumb was closer over to the top of the neck, using it like a fulcrum to help me bend. But back then, based on books and technique and all that other crazy stuff, I was doing those bends with my thumb behind the neck. It's pretty laborious. It's pretty taxing on your hands. And so maybe if you haven't been playing guitar very long, it doesn't seem like a big deal to you, but I've been playing many decades, too many that I care to admit. And I'm just telling you that that stuff is going to run you into problems eventually. That's just one example of many. So another one that kind of comes to mind has to do with chords. And, certain guitars, certain shaped necks, certain, people's hands, longer fingers, shorter fingers, bigger hand, short fingers, smaller hand, long fingers. There's all these variables. But when you play a chord, like this chord, this is E flat major 7. Sorry about that. So I can play it that way, but that's not nearly as comfortable as if I do this. Now my hand is completely relaxed, but if you go by books, it's like, oh, well, your thumb is showing and, your hand's a little bit turned to the side and all those things are supposedly bad. They're not bad. They're bad if they hurt your hand. But if your hand in this position or this shape or this configuration feels comfortable, then there isn't anything bad about it. Try to ignore that stuff and find for yourself what works best. Some really great proof of this, if you watch a number of different guitar players, modern players from back in the day, as people say, everybody's technique is different. If you watch, say, someone like Pat Metheny, who's a pretty stellar musician, his thumb is over the neck and his hand looks a little different or weird than maybe books might tell you, but it sure does work for him. If you check out another player, maybe somebody like Scott Henderson, if you're into jazz fusion type stuff, Scott's a great player. Check his stuff out if you haven't. Same thing, man. Scott's hand is not like that. Some guys, in fact, a lot of times Scott is only using 3 fingers. And all these books tell you always to use 4. Well, yeah, using 4 fingers is great. But if doing this is easy for you that way and difficult that way, maybe you should explore some other options. So I know that a lot of this information maybe sounds pretty obvious, but after teaching for so many years, I assure you, I promise you, I tell you and assure you, I see this all the time when people are sitting across from me in this room and I'm teaching lessons here at the Academy. And so that being said, you really just kind of want to try to avoid that stuff as much as possible. Also, another gift that we have on guitar is notes have so many different locations, right? So as an example, this F, this F, this F, and this F, and this one, they're all the same octave. They're all the same note. They're all F, but they're all in the same octave. And so that means that if a particular fingering for you is maybe difficult, that might be an easy one, but something like this, and I realize it's just a scale, but that may be tough for you. Well, you don't have to do that. There's so many other different ways of playing them that it's not important that you cop to a certain one that's uncomfortable. So regarding right hand, I am a left-handed person, not a left-handed player, meaning I don't know if this is coming to you in the proper orientation, but I'm playing what I would call standard grip, like most everyone plays. But it's probably important that I mention to you that I am a left-handed individual. And I mention that because when I started as a little kid playing guitar, I I was pretty spastic with a pick. So I just started to play with my thumb. And so everything I did was, and you can get pretty far that way. If you've ever heard of a jazz guitar player named Wes Montgomery, that's some pretty good proof of being able to get really far with it. But I eventually got to the point where, maybe doing was going to be pretty difficult with your thumb, at least for me. And so I was playing for a number of years by the time I actually grabbed a pick and tried to begin to use it. And probably of no surprise to you, it was like, I felt like I was just starting guitar on that day after playing for years. So it was like taking a lot of steps backwards. At the end of the day, it was worth doing it, and I'm not sorry I did it. But I'm trying to make a point here that there's so many different misnomers about right hand technique and pick. And so I vote that you check all the different ways out. I'm going to name some of them here. Hopefully I name most of them. Books will tell you about alternate picking. I'm sure you've heard of that. It just means that if you start with a downstroke, the next pick stroke is an upstroke. If you started with an upstroke, the next pick stroke is a downstroke. So you're just alternating direction with it. For certain things, it's really great, especially if you're playing on one string. So if you had some notes on a string, it works rather well for that, okay? But when you're crossing over strings, if you have 3 notes per string, this can work out very well. So if I start out with an upstroke, I'm going to alternate all of them. Sorry about that. The pick is always sort of facing in the proper direction. And what I mean by that is up, down, up, and then I'm crossing a string that I'm supposed to start with an upstroke. So all I have to do is pull my hand back a little bit. That's when there's 3 notes per string. That can work out really well. But if we do that with 4 notes per string, there's going to be some issues. So once again, I'll start with an upstroke. 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, you can see that the last thing was a downstroke. My next note is supposed to be on the B string, and it's supposed to be an upstroke. So I've got a long distance to travel to get back there. I'm exaggerating the distance to try to show you this, but it still exists even in a smaller context. It's a lot of stuff. Your pick's out in the air, floating around. So that's an example of one way that alternate picking works well, and perhaps one way that it doesn't. There's something called economy picking, which is kind of where you only, I guess the easiest way to say it is you only change direction of the pick when you're on a string. When you're crossing a string, you just push through. So if I just play a major scale, well, that's not going to work, right? 2 notes on that string. So what if I start with an upstroke? That works out pretty well. Started with an upstroke. I was able to push right through to the next string. My pick was already facing in that direction. So up, down, down, because we cross strings. Up, down, down, we cross strings again. That's what economy picking is. And that works backwards as well. And that doesn't matter if you have odd or even numbers of notes on the string, as long as you start correctly, right? So that may be a way that economy picking works pretty well. There's something called sweep picking for when you're crossing strings, and so it's a form of economy picking, but it's a little bit more exaggerated. So this is just the D major arpeggio if you watch my right hand. If I do that backwards, so the pick is only traveling in one direction. Unidirectional picking, sweep picking, that's pretty great too for things like that. What about if you have some, say, large intervallic leaps, like maybe things that are a sixth away? You know, that's, I mean, you can do that at certain tempos, but you're never going to be able to go, most likely, with your pick going across there. So what I did is I used the pick and also my middle finger on my right hand. That's called hybrid picking. You don't have to use your middle finger. You can use your third finger. You can use your middle and your third finger. You can create a banjo roll type of thing with the pick and 2 fingers. But this is another technique that has some great benefits depending upon the musical passage that you're trying to execute. And then, of course, there are hammer-ons and pull-ups that aid us as well, which is not a right hand thing, but it plays into how we treat our right hand. So what I'm really trying to say here is try not to listen to books when it comes to things about technique. We all approach playing the instrument differently, and we all arrange the notes a bit differently. There's certainly similarities between players, but I've seen enough players and I've played long enough myself to know that I've changed things over the years to accommodate certain type of stuff. I've gotten rid of certain fingerings. I've gotten rid of certain ideas about technique, and it actually helped me play the instrument more effortlessly. And I think that's what any and all of us want, regardless of whatever style of music you choose. You want it to be effortless. You want it to not be a fight. Your guitar setup is really important in that way too. Don't listen to what people say about what gauge strings you should use, or that, a Stratocaster is a longer scale length, right? So 25 3/4, 25 and a half versus 24 3/4, like a Gibson scale length would be. So Les Paul's ES335s, 24 3/4, Stratocasters, Telecasters, 25 and a half. So, people will say, when you have a longer scale length, like a Stratocaster or a Telecaster, you should put nines on there because the tension is spanned across a longer distance, which makes for a stiffer feel. So I guess the thing is, nines feel like tens on a Fender because of the long scale length. Now, if you go to a Gibson scale length, you should be using, according to popular consensus, you should be using 10, probably 10 through 46. And by the way, if you detune, throw all that information out because it puts a big monkey wrench in there. But if we're talking about standard tuning, the basic understanding is such that if you have a shorter scale length, you want to put 10 to 46 on there. If you have a longer scale length, you want to put 9 to 42 approximately on there, with some exceptions, of course. Well, I'm here to tell you that I agree with that, and I mostly I do that most all my guitars, and I have several guitars. I do that on most all of them. The guitar I'm holding today, not by design or plan, but the guitar I'm holding today is a Fender Strat, and it's the normal Fender Stratocaster scale length, right? So this guitar, by way of this information, should have 9 to 42 on it. Well, it has 10 to 46, and it plays really easily. So you have to throw all that stuff out and go with what works for you. I don't play with a real heavy-handed kind of thing. If you're one of those people, that could change things as well. But your guitar setup is vitally important. Get it to, if you can't do it yourself, if you can't adjust your truss rod and your action and your intonation, and maybe even do a little bit of fretwork, if you can't do that, it is so worth you paying the money to have someone do that to your guitar, because it's a game changer. It is completely a game changer in your playing, in how much you love the instrument, how much you look forward to playing it because of that. There's nothing worse than a really great looking or a guitar that you're really excited about that you just can't. I hear people use the term, I just couldn't make friends with it. I often wonder when people say that, did you take it to a luthier? Did you take it across the great setup guy's bench and pay the extra money to have it done properly? To let him know what you want, the kind of strings you like, the players you listen to. Let him watch you play a little bit. He'll be able, if he's good, he'll be able to garner a lot of information about how you approach the instrument, and that'll help him assess the way that he may go about setting up the guitar in conjunction with what you've told him. So a lot of this stuff is, you can find this information all over the place. But I think I've become the person that is the naysayer, right? Not in a bad way. I just challenge some of the things that have kind of become what I call ugly urban legend. Somebody said it once and now it's law. You should check it out on your own, and you should try some different things and find what works best for you, and not really listen to too much advice from other players, even from your heroes or your idols. Stevie Ray Vaughan, it's kind of known he used really heavy strings. Well, does that mean if you like Stevie Ray Vaughan and you buy a Fender Custom Shop Stevie Ray Vaughan Strat that you should put whatever he used on there, 12s or 13s, I don't even know. No, you shouldn't. You're not him. You can get the job done in a different way. You have players that use really light strings. B.B. King used very light strings. Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top, light strings. These guys get great tone. They play wonderfully. So it's all how you approach it. Anyway, this concludes the next to the last video in this long series. It was 30 videos. This is number 29, so I have one more to do yet. I appreciate everyone tuning in. If you like the information, please hit the like button. Please subscribe to the channel. If you don't, my analytics tell me that not as many people subscribe that watch the channel. In other words, people that watch the channel, less of them are subscribed than those of those that are. But really, give it a like, subscribe, and I'm going to be starting a new series, a much shorter one, much shorter than 30 videos, but it's pretty exciting. I'm pretty excited about it. I've been, working on all the ideas for it during the time of doing these 30 videos. So stay tuned for the last one. At the end of video 30, I will give you a little tip about what the next series is about. And again, I really appreciate you watching. Have a great day. Be safe out there. Thanks so much.